Everybody. Good evening. Happy Sunday. Thanks so much for joining me. I am Gina from Advantage College Planning, and I'm excited to talk with you all tonight about goal setting and specifically setting goals for that first semester. So, whether your students are in middle school or high school, this first semester of the year is a great time to get things started. So, we are going to be talking about how to set goals, what types of goals that I work with my students on setting for the first semester. So, that's what we'll be talking about tonight, all things goal setting. So we'll give everyone a chance to come in and get settled. It's nice and cool here in North Carolina this evening. There's a bit of a chill in the air. It's a good night for a fire pit if you have one, especially if you have a long weekend. I know a lot of our schools are closed tomorrow for the holiday. So thanks so much for joining me on your holiday weekend. Maybe you're joining me from your fire pit. That would be lovely. So as you're coming in and get settled, welcome. It's so great to see everybody coming in. So make sure you put in the chat, just let me know where you're tuning in from, what year your students are. Give me a thumbs up and a heart if you can hear me. It's always good to know that all my technology is working, but it's really great for me to know who is here joining on the call tonight. I will be talking about goal setting from the perspective of 8th grade through high school. So really we'll be touching on content that'll be relevant for any of you, depending on where your children are in this process. But it is always helpful for me to know, where people are coming from. They're here locally in the Raleigh area where we have our main office, or if you are joining us from one of our franchise locations up in Maine or in Buffalo or down in Florida, probably much warmer down in Florida, or out in the Bay Area of California. So lots of great opportunities to work with us no matter where you live all across the US. Awesome. Great. So again, tonight we are going to be talking about goal setting and how to set those first semester goals. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat and I'll be sure to answer them before the end of our little get together here this evening. All right, awesome. So let's just jump right in and get started then. So let's talk about goal setting. There are 3 categories that I work with my students on setting goals in every semester: first semester, second semester, and then we do also talk about what they're going to do with their summer as well. But we're here in October, so it's prime time for first semester goal setting. Some of you might be thinking, why are we talking about first semester goal setting? It's a little late. My student is, 5-6 weeks into the semester at this point. I hear you. I understand that. And it is good to set goals at the beginning of the semester, but I would actually say that it's better to set a goal, especially for students in school. It's really hard for them at the age of, 8th grade, 13 up through 17-year-old seniors right now. Cognitively, the idea of planning ahead what I'm going to need to do or what I'm going to need to accomplish that's going to help me in the future past the time that I will accomplish this goal is not the type of thinking that their brain is capable of doing at this point in development, right? That part of their brain where they can think ahead and forward think is not fully formed yet. And we see that in all different areas of their behavior and in our experience working with students. So when we're thinking about goal setting, I like to often wait until the students are in the situation before I'm asking them to make a goal of what they would like to get out of this situation. So if we're talking about academics, right, it's helpful for the student to actually be in the classes, have a few weeks of time with that teacher, maybe mess up a little bit on the first quiz or homework assignment of the semester, and then be able to start to realize what they want and what they're going to need to do to get there. So setting a first semester goal in October actually is a really good time if you think about the way that their brains are going to be attacking this task that we're asking them to do. So the 3 categories that I have my students set goals in are academics, like I mentioned. The second is extracurricular activities. And then the third is a personal goal. There's also intention behind this. So the reason that I ask my students to set goals in these 3 areas is because when they get to the point where they're applying to college, we spend so much time focusing on their academics. What are their classes that they're taking? What kind of grades are they getting? Grades are important for college, and that is true. But once they get to the point where they're creating a Common Application account and they're having to fill that out and they're having to write all of these essays that the colleges are requiring of them, that's when they start to realize, oh, I actually need a few significant extracurricular activities that I've been involved in for more than just the start of senior year in order to make this a strong application. Students also need to be able to show maturity and independence in their application. And that comes through again in their activities. It comes through in the way that they're writing their essays. If they go and have an interview with a school, that's certainly going to come across a bit in that discussion, in that interview. So by focusing now on not only academics, but also the extracurricular activities and helping them grow as a person, by the time they get to their application process, their common application in the fall of their senior year, they'll be prepared. And then I would argue, even more importantly, by the time they're on that college campus without any of us there to support them, you and I will not be there. They will also have those skills in place to help them to continue to be successful on that college campus. So academic, extracurricular, personal goal. So let's talk about academic goal setting, because that's always the most straightforward. And that's usually the one the students are expecting when I tell them we're going to set goals. They're so used to people talking to them about their grades. This is an easy one, right? So when we're thinking about goal setting, regardless of whether I'm sitting with an 8th grader or a junior, we want to make sure that we're breaking that goal down into as detailed of steps as possible so that we can really actually measure whether they're reaching this goal or not. We want to make it specific so that then the student can look back and say, oh, yes, I am doing or I am not doing the steps that it takes to reach this goal, without there being concrete examples and clear measurable steps and a clear measurable outcome to know if the goal was achieved or not. The student won't have any feedback and won't really know if they achieved the goal or not. And so then the goal setting exercise becomes a bit of a waste of time, right? So if we're setting an academic goal, the first thing I'll ask the students is, talk to me about your classes. We'll go through each of their classes all the way through their schedule. And then I'll ask them, okay, how are things going, right? Like, what are your current grades? What's going well for you? What are you struggling with? Great. Then I'll say, okay, you told me about history class. You currently have a B in history. By the end of this semester, and so I also give them the date. So for Wake County Public Schools, the end of the high school semester is usually right around January for most of the schools that have a semester schedule. Some schools have slightly different schedules. So think about when that first semester actually ends for your student. So it's okay, first semester, by mid-January, what do you want to have achieved in history class specifically? The student says, well, I have a B, but I really think I could have an A if I took these following steps. Great. So then the goal for the history class becomes, I'm going to have an A by the end of the semester. Then we need to break down, what do you need to do in history in order to get that A? And then let the student identify. It's not as helpful for the students in terms of their actual taking initiative and follow through on the goals if you as the adult are rattling off all the things that you know that they need to do. You and I both know they probably need to study more. They probably need to pay better attention in class and not be chatting with their friends. They probably need to be checking over their homework. They probably need to be participating more in class so that they know what's going on. We know these things. But if they're sitting across from us and we're just telling them, okay, perfect, then you just need to do A, B, and C, and the student just says, yep, that's what I need to do. It sounds wonderful and you feel so good and you feel like, oh, they're going to go and do all the things and get the A and it's amazing. And I'm here to tell you that I've been doing this for over 20 years. And the chance of that happening, if you were the one to tell the student what they needed to do, is minuscule. What actually works better is if you can be asking questions and get the student to tell you what they need to do. And then you can repeat back to them, oh, okay, so you ask the student says, well, when I get home, I do kind of rush through the assignment and do the bare minimum because I just want to get it done. But so I'm getting B's, but if I spent, 20 more minutes, I probably would have gotten an A if I would have just checked over the assignment. So then you can repeat back to them and you can say, okay, so it sounds like if you're thinking if you spend a bit more time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes more on each assignment after school, you would get an A in the class. And the student would then can say, yeah, that sounds good. And then you can say, okay, so what do you want to set as a benchmark for earning this A in history. It sounds really annoying, probably, hearing me say it, and it sounds very tedious, this back and forth. But once you get into the conversation, it flows a little bit better. And I'm telling you, if you can get the student to tell you what they need to do, they're more likely to take ownership and actually do it. So I go through this process and come up with usually 2, sometimes 3 benchmarks for each individual class that the student is in. So that was a plan for history. The student might have a completely different grade and need a whole different type of structure in order to meet their goal for math, right? Those are 2 very different classes, 2 very different teachers, very different skill set, right? So that's why it's important that we're not going to say, oh, my freshman first semester goal for academics is I'm just going to get an A in all my classes and move on. That is way too broad. It also doesn't give them any sense of satisfaction, because if they earn 1 B, let's say they're taking 4 classes and they earn 1 B and 3 A's, then they didn't meet their goal. Well, that feels kind of lousy. They did meet 3/4 of their goal, right? So if we're thinking about wanting to roll that motivation into second semester, then what we need to do is break that down. So we'll say an A in math, an A in English, an A in science, and an A in Spanish. And then if we only get an A on 3 of those 4 classes, we now have very clearly, we can acknowledge and we can celebrate the pieces that the student did achieve. So being really specific is really, really important. Sitting down, breaking it down, and being really thoughtful, and having the student say to you what they need to do. The next category of goal setting is the extracurricular goal setting. And this is important for all students. Again, 8th grade through juniors, extracurricular goal setting is important. It's going to look a little different, obviously, depending how old your student is. So an 8th grader or a 9th grader, I would say, they're still maybe kind of new in their activities. 8th grade only has so many clubs and activities that are available to them. Maybe your student's involved in dance or a sport. 9th grade, they're kind of just getting into the high school realm. Maybe they've joined a couple clubs, maybe they haven't. This is a good time to look at those club lists. So if your student is new to school, the first step is look at what kind of clubs and opportunities are even available at this school. A lot of times students will say, oh, there's just nothing that interests me. And then we go through the whole list that's on the high school's website on their activities page. And they're like, oh, I didn't know there was a such and such club. Oh, and then they come back the next time. They're like, yeah, I talked to my friend and like, he's in that too. And I didn't even know. Right. So that's the first thing, is just look and see what's available. Think about, for the younger students, start to think about what are the activities that you're involved in. Ask them these questions. Let's look at what you're involved in. Why are you doing this? Why are you in chess club? Why are you playing club soccer? Why are you doing competitive dance? Why are you in this? And then they might say, I don't know, I hate it. And if that's the case, we need to find a new activity, because life's too short to spend time doing outside of school activities that you don't love. But if they love the activity and they love what they're doing, then the next question is, how do you want to improve? So for younger students, they're not going to become the president of a club, right, in 8th or 9th grade. That's realistically not going to happen. It's not about that. It's about, how do you want to improve your involvement within this organization? How can you improve the value that you are adding to this group? What is your value add? How are you making this club better by just you being in it? How do you want to improve? How can you impact the club? Have them start thinking about it that way. For 10th and 11th grade students, now's the time to start shifting a little more to that college focus. So start thinking, okay, why am I doing this? Again, this is a good reset. Like if I've been doing, oh, I'm doing this because I've been doing it for years, but I don't really like it and I would much rather do something else. Well, now's a good time to shift gears, right? But if it's something that they really love, think about, what is it that you think you might want to major in college? Is there a career path that you just find interesting that you want to learn more about? This is a good time to start getting involved in activities, whether those are clubs, those could be volunteering opportunities outside of school. This could be involvement with church. This could be a part-time job. By the time they're in 10th or 11th grade, they're oftentimes old enough to start getting a part-time job on the weekends. Again, varsity sports, arts, theater, dance, all of those categories. think about, how can I engage in this activity in a way that is teaching me a little bit more about this major, about this career that I think I might be interested in? Is there something related? So if I'm interested in engineering, is there a robotics club? Is there an engineering club? Is there something involved with coding that I can do? Right? That could also be, maybe they like computer science and they like coding. Maybe there's another club that needs someone to help them make their website. And so the student really isn't interested in being involved in the crochet club, but the crochet club needs somebody to design a website, and your student loves computer science. That could be a way to get involved with crochet club as their website developer, right? So these are the types of things to start thinking about. If your student already has their plate full, they're not looking to get involved in any new activities, that's fine. But then go back to what I was saying about the 8th and 9th grade students. How can we take what you're doing and level it up? How can we take your general involvement and create a situation where you're having a bigger impact than just showing up to meetings and leaving? How are you making this group better because you're in it? What void can you fill? Those kinds of things are really what you're looking for. Because when it gets to the point that you have to be working on your activity list for your common application, that's the stuff that you need to add. You also could think about essays. Students are going to have so many essays to write. Some schools are asking, what's an extracurricular activity that's been meaningful to you? If your student has not joined any clubs, if they haven't done anything, that's going to be a tough essay to write, right? Or if they're only joining things just to say, I was a member, I showed up there, I can put something down, but it wasn't meaningful to them. Again, tough essay to write. So this is when we need to start thinking ahead. So Nadia asked a good question. Does the job that a student has need to be related to a major they're interested in? No, it does not. And I would say for paid work, most times it doesn't, right? Students are interested in healthcare. They're not going to be able to get hired, in any kind of medical capacity, for example, right? But so job itself is a totally separate, super valid extracurricular activity. Having a job that is nothing to do with what your student wants to pursue in college is great. That is showing colleges that your student is responsible, that they're responsible to someone else other than you as their parent. It's showing a sense of maturity. It's showing a sense of initiative because they had to go out and get that job, right? It's showing time management. It's showing possibly money management because they're getting paid, so they have to learn what to do with their money. Lots of great things with the job. So if a student, though, has a chance to do any job shadowing for a career that they're interested in, or I have had students who, let's say, twice now, I've had students who are interested in veterinary medicine, and they were able to get part-time jobs working at a local veterinary hospital in the front, doing, like check-ins and more reception work. But then over time, both of them were actually able to turn that into a high school internship, and they were able to do a little bit more hands-on work at the veterinary clinic and a lot of more shadowing of different things that the vets were doing. So that would be an example of having a part-time job that is adjacent to your future major. But most of my students have jobs that are common for high school students, grocery stores and movie theaters and places like that. All totally valid. The third category is the personal goal setting. So personal goal setting is usually where students are like, what? I don't really know what you want me to set here. What are you talking about? So this can really be anything. So personal goal setting for 8th through 10th graders, I usually have them focus on increasing their level of independence and building strong habits. So this, for my younger students, can look like waking myself up in the morning and not having my mom have to wake me up. Changing my own sheets and doing my own laundry, learning how to do my own laundry. Doing some meal planning or meal prep, or just learning how to make 3 go-to meals that I can make by myself that involve the stove, right? Learning how to iron. So ironing and laundry could kind of go together, like do my own clothing. For older students, sometimes it gets more advanced. Like I'm going to learn how to do basic car maintenance, like change a tire and add air to my tire and fill the gas and take my car to go get oil change on my own. Like not have my mom do it, not have my dad do it. Like I'm going to be the one to go and do these things. That's really relevant for students who are getting older and getting ready to drive or are driving. So Oh, another one I've had students set is around doctor's appointments. So making their own doctor's appointments or dentist appointments, going into the pharmacy to pick up their own prescriptions, things like that. These are the types of skills that they're going to need to know once they're in college and they're on their own. And again, we're not with them. So if we can give them the time and the space and the dedicated focus to work on those steps now, it's going to help them obviously become more independent adults when they are no longer under our care. I will say, with a little side note to this, that, and as a parent myself, I get it, but this one often does require a little bit of letting go from the parents. So it can be really hard sometimes when my students say, my goal is going to be to learn how to do my own laundry. I've had, a few students who have said that. I have one student who said, my goal is going to be, I'm going to start making my own lunch 2 days a week. Not all 5, but 2 days a week, I will make my own lunch. And so having parents allow the students to actually take that on. Some people are all for it. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard. It's like you have your own system for that. You don't want them messing up the washing machine. I totally get it, but it's really important as part of their development. For 11th graders, I focus on specifically building teacher relationships. And we're going to talk about this more. I'm going to come back on the 22nd. We're going to talk specifically about junior year, but focusing on those teacher relationships junior year is key, because your junior year teachers are your recommendation writers. And so it's really hard if a student hasn't done any work all year to build those relationships with teachers, and they just go in, they don't cause a problem in class, but they go in, they do their work, and they leave, period. By the end of the year, the teacher doesn't really have much to say about them. They can say that the student's a good student. They can say that the student is a hard worker. But if they have good grades, the college already knows the student's a good student. What they want to know more about is the student's character, the student's personality. How do they interact with their classmates? How do they interact with the teacher? All these different types of things. So by putting in effort now to really build those relationships, it will pay off well in the end of junior year when students go to ask for those letters of rec and they have lots of teachers to choose from, and the letters are strongly written. So after we set these goals, then we need to continually check in and follow up about them. So goal setting isn't just like a set it and forget it, right? We know this. If you set a goal we all set New Year's resolutions, and then statistically, we're not likely to actually follow through on it. So if you actually want to be successful with a goal, you have to continually check in on it. With my students, every time after we set the goal, when they come in for every subsequent meeting, we just do a quick check-in. How are things going in your classes? Oh, okay, you were going to do X, Y, and Z for your extracurricular activity. The first step was to go to the interest meeting. Have you gone to the interest meeting yet? Just kind of keep it front of mind. And then adjust as necessary. We're a few weeks into the school year now. Sometimes students started off really strong and they're like all A's in all the classes. And then, maybe we need to readjust. Maybe you are really working hard and you are doing the best you can and you're landing at a solid mid B. And maybe at this point, getting up to an A isn't realistic. That's okay. Let's readjust then. Maybe your goal is to get an 87, right? Instead of an 85. So it's okay to readjust. And I think it's important to show kids that that's also okay and that's not failure. And then we need to celebrate the wins. So when good things happen and when the students meet either parts or all of their goal, we have to celebrate that. For some students, they might want to go out and get some Starbucks, right? For some students, they just want a hug and a celebration, but there has to be some kind of positive acknowledgement that this thing that you were working for, you hit this, and that's really great. And that, again, that positive feeling will hopefully help them. And when we sit down to set the second semester goals, they'll be encouraged and they'll want to keep that going. So if you have any questions, this is a great time to put them in the chat. I will let you know that, again, I will be back on October 22nd at 8 o'clock. I'll be specifically talking about junior year. And so for my juniors, I call it the big three. So grades, teacher connections, and extracurriculars. So we'll be talking about why that's so important in junior year and really how to make the most of these three areas, specifically those teacher connections and thinking about those letters of recommendation, and also the extracurriculars, just kind of all of it. It's just very important for junior year because it's the last year they have before they start working on those applications. So it's the last year to get everything in and end strong. So I will be back for that. But if this was helpful for you, then I'm hoping to see you on the 22nd. And you also can find a lot of other information like this on our website, advcp.com. You can find our blog, our podcast, and webinars, all kinds of great resources. So definitely check that out. And I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on the 22nd. Thanks so much. Good night.